matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Boom, we are back, Taylor. How are you?
Good, how are you? Happy Halloween. Right?
Today is
It's Thursday.
Halloween.
Are you
Today is
trick-or-treating?
Halloween. No, I'm not gonna trick or treat. My last trick or treat, I wanted to dress like a werewolf, and my mom was trying to do it on the cheap, and so she ended up like doing my makeup, and I ended up looking like a kitty cat with like whiskers, and I was like, "This is really embarrassing. I never want to do this again."
Were you like 15?
It's like, yeah, probably like 18, but yeah.
Oh. You don't get trick-or-treaters. Your house is really far from the street.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't think last year I got any trick or treaters. Yeah, so, but you do, right?
I don't get trick-or-treaters, no, because there's no, I live
Easy
like
way.
up a hill. Yeah. It's a lot of work to walk up this hill for very little reward just to see if we're there. Um, but we'll go to a different neighborhood and go trick-or-treating.
Hey, what's trunk or treat? I've heard people say that.
It's where you go to a parking lot and people have their cars decorated and they're like parked in the parking lot, have the trunk open and there's candy in the trunk. So like you can decorate your trunk spooky or like my brother-in-law just had a picture. Had like their back of their minivan open with like big eyes and um teeth and then you just go. So you just like you get the experience of like stopping at different places to get candy, but you're just like in a parking lot.
Interesting. Okay.
So they'll do it at like a church or a school or something. So like kids who aren't in the neighborhoods that can trick or treat can go, things like that.
Is that what you're gonna do with the kids?
No, we're gonna go actual trick or treating. There's like a neighborhood that has it, so I think we're gonna go there.
Nice.
Yeah,
That'll be
the
fun.
trick or treat's cute.
What are they dressing as?
Florence is gonna be a lion because she loves lions, and Miles is gonna be a cow.
All right. Very,
I
very
think it's gonna
animal
be
themed.
cold too. Yeah, it's gonna be in the 60s, so it'll be fun. We had Florence's birthday party yesterday, and some of them wore costumes and stuff, and we had a thing last week, and yeah, it's been cute.
Fun.
Oh, and I'm making everybody dress up at work every day. Today I was a jar of olives. I don't know if you've seen my jar of olives costume, but this is the headpiece. My sister made it. And then it's a dress that I don't have in here, but it's like this is big olives all over it.
That is
It's so
very
funny.
cute. That is very cute. Technically, I'm
Yeah.
supposed to wear a costume tomorrow on Zoom, and I literally have nothing planned. So,
Yeah, it was cute this morning. Um, like someone in our dev call was dressed like a chicken, like a full body chicken outfit. It was fun.
do you remember that time
Today's theme
somebody?
was food.
Do you remember that?
Tomorrow's theme is tomorrow's theme is pop culture. I'm gonna be Bruno Mars. Gonna be awesome.
Do you remember that time that someone ordered a chicken comedian at work?
Yes.
Wasn't that horrible and embarrassing for everyone?
Why does he do that? That's horrible.
It was for her birthday.
Ugh.
So sad.
Anyway.
Anyways.
Anyway, wait, to introduce us.
Oh,
This has been
right.
terrible. Happy Halloween. Welcome to James to Fail. We are the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters and epic failures twice a week, every week. Today is Halloween, and I'm Taylor, joined by Fires.
I'm Fars, joined here by Taylor, and we are going to be discussing a topic that I'm probably not going to be able to guess.
Um, well, I do want to say, as Halloween comes to an end, a big thank you to our friend Jay, and a big no thank you to Fars because you didn't join any movies, but it was very fun. And we've watched many a film with Jay over the past couple couple weeks, and some of the scary ones we watched Incantation, that was on Netflix, that was super scary. We watched Oddity, that was on Shudder last night, and that was pretty good, or 2 nights ago. So we've watched
What's
some
been
good
your
ones.
favorite?
Um, I'm looking at it. We haven't watched all of them. We saw Wishmaster. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's from the 80s. It's like actually pretty fun.
Yeah, I can picture the VHS thing.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
was very scary,
A
and
thousand percent. There's like a djinn and he like, you know, for some reason he has to grant 3 wishes to like get out or something of the like lamp that he's in. And like he does hilarious things like one guy wishes for $1 million and the next scene is that guy's mom getting on a flight and signing up for insurance for $1 million insurance policy and the plane just explodes.
it's like this is
It's just
not
like
good wish making.
it's hilarious. So yeah, that was a good one. I liked Oddity a lot that we watched the other night. We watched Mine was The People Under the Stairs. That was fun. It's always fun to,
Oh my God. I haven't
it's so
seen that
stupid.
in so long.
Yeah, it's fun to watch again. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey was exactly what you expected it to be.
It was great. I
Maybe,
love that movie.
maybe even weirder, but it was fun. Yeah, super fun. So yeah, it's been really fun. So I have one more then, thing for Halloween. Hold on, I'm looking up what it was on The Cleansing Hour. Did I watch this one? Oh yeah, The Cleansing Hour was not good until the last 10 minutes. And then you were like, that was real fun. So
Hey, are you able to share the sheet with me? I don't think I have access to this one.
I guess, no, I'll
I
share it with
just
you.
no, because I want to watch like horror movies like for the waning days of October, and I just want to like not have to pay for it. So, and Jay does an incredible job of telling you which ones are free and which ones aren't.
I know, here's a great job carrying it. I selected you. Yeah, super fun. So anyway, let's talk. I will tell you a story, farmers, about a very classic crime that is very spooky and scary and that we still talk about today. I actually mentioned it in the most recent What We Do in the Shadows last night. So it was like, it just is something that we'll talk about forever. So I'm not going to make you guess, but I'm going to talk about Jack the Ripper.
Ooh, fun.
I read a lot of books. I read The Complete Jack the Ripper by Donald Rumbelow. I read The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Haley Rubenhold. I listened to the After Dark podcast, and I'm not going to really talk about this, but I read a book called The Lodger by Marie Bellak-Londis. It was written in like the early 1900s about the idea that Jack the Ripper could have been someone that was like lodging at someone's house, like someone who's renting a room in your house, and they just like he like sneaks out in the middle of the night and she hears him, and then she like the next morning knows that there was a murder and like trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And I watched the movie The Lodger by Alfred Hitchcock from 1927, which is a silent film and one of his first films, and it's pretty great. You can see it on YouTube. Um, it's a totally different ending than the book, so you got to do both if you ever
Nice.
want to, but they're pretty fun. So, um, in reading this, so the book I read was The Complete Jack the Ripper, and there was another one that was like The Complete and Final Jack the Ripper, and then there's like The Complete and I'm Right, You're Wrong Jack the Ripper. Like, no one fucking knows what happened, you know?
Jack the Ripper was the Diddy of his generation.
I mean, we know what happened. We know who did it. We don't know who Jack the Ripper is.
I mean, like
Um,
that's what like you would do if you were probably super rich and like wealthy. It had to be a rich, wealthy
Potentially.
person. It had to be a doctor.
No, mm-mm. It didn't have to be.
Okay.
I'll tell
You
you
have to
why.
educate me.
Okay. So no one really agrees on anything. But some of the facts are actual facts, so we'll talk about those. People who are obsessed with Jack the Ripper are called Ripperologists, and there's thousands of books on him. Some of the stuff that I read was like everything comes at it from a different angle. You either like this is um like wait, where did I go? Oh, so some people are like, it doesn't matter who he was, like it's just like we shouldn't talk about, or we shouldn't talk about how gruesome the crimes were, or it doesn't matter really, it doesn't matter like the people who were killed, they're the ones that matter, or whatever. I think that I still want to know who he was if we could ever figure that out, but I don't think we ever would, you
I don't
know?
think it's yeah.
Yeah. Um, and like there's stuff that is like, um, there's like maybe DNA evidence that could like find him. That's just like never gonna work. It's like over 100 years old. Like
Yeah.
it's just not a thing. Um, and the also like I do think also like it's interesting that there are modern rippers. Like Peter Curtin was like 100 years ago, but he was like the Vampire of Dusseldorf, like a ripper. There's the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, and then I was like, wait a minute, maybe it's someone named Peter who's Jack the Ripper, because there's two other rippers that are also named Peter.
How do you define a ripper?
But it's really just like a press moniker for like a fun, like a they like wanted to be a ripper. I think that it was like he was initially called it was like the Whitechapel murders and also like called Leather Apron for a little bit because they were thinking he would have been like a butcher, someone who wears a leather apron, which is weird and gross. Like I get the idea that you would have a apron out of leather, but I also hate that those
I
words
mean,
together.
if you want to walk around the city just completely covered in blood, you should dress like a butcher.
That's exactly true. Exactly right. So, um, I also like definitely would love to know who the Zodiac was, you know? Like I think the mystery keeps it mysterious, but it's also I think it'd be cool to know, you know?
That one's a weird one that we don't know, given how I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not that weird because
I think
didn't
it's
Richard
weird.
Ramirez get pulled over in a stolen car and then write like the devil sign on the hood of the car and then run away in the night? Like, I mean,
Something.
they weren't
Yeah.
gonna catch him either.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't know, but I think so. We're gonna talk a little bit about the crimes, mostly about the women, and then a couple of the suspects and like what happened, and then some stuff that I learned that like negates other stuff that I've learned, like listening to like other podcasts about it, or just like what I thought I knew, you know. So I think that it's interesting because this is the one where there's like 1,000 different perspectives on what happened, more than you would think. So it is 1888, and we are in London, and it is awful, basically.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah. Especially awful if you are poor, and you are probably poor. Most people are poor.
Yeah.
Um, the Queen Victoria just had her 50-year jubilee the year before. And people were obviously like excited about that, but also like just like the coronation of King Charles the other day. I don't know, when was that? Like a year or two ago? But you're like, he's driving in his like golden carriage through the town. People like can't afford food, you know?
So crazy.
Yeah. So, the poor in London, they're like really poor. It's like Oliver Twist poor. Hundreds of people sleep on the ground. Um, you've been to London, right?
Actually, I've been to London several times, but I've literally never left the airport.
Oh, well, you've not been to London, I guess.
I,
Um,
I landed in the city. I just never went into the city.
but Trafalgar Square is like a big square. You can go there now. It's like a big statue. People would just hundreds of people would sleep there every night. They'd sleep in corners. They'd sleep in alleys. They'd sleep behind houses. It's just like the unhoused population was out of control. Some things that you could do to get aid from the city of London. You could get outside aid where you would like apply for it and say like, I'm having trouble getting employment. I have nowhere to live, and they would give you money. Like they would give you like a little allowance every day so that you could eat. You could also use that money to potentially get like a bed in a lot in like a lodging house for a night, but you paid by the night. So you had to like pay to get in and then you stayed. The money in these stories is a little bit hard to understand. Like I don't really understand how much a shilling is or like a pence or like what that means. But like if you did have a Queen Victoria gold shilling, now it'd be worth like $400. But I think it's like not that much money
Right.
in this time. You could also live technically inside of a workhouse, which is a place where you go when you have like pretty much given up. You get to stay there, but you have to do like manual labor. Like for some reason, part of one of the jobs was breaking rocks to like move rocks to a different place. Like really bad work. They're dirty. There's bugs everywhere. Everyone is sick. Like it's terrible. You would also go there if you needed like a doctor and you were homeless or like have a baby. You would go to these workhouses and just like really, really bad conditions. Like women would be in labor next to like a drunk person next to an old person dying. Like it was just a
Was
terrible place to be.
was like a government paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
hmm But you had to do the manual labor and you would get let in the evening and you would get let out at like 9 a.m. In some cases. Like you couldn't leave any earlier than that. So you couldn't find any other work either. Like you kind of only had to do the jobs there. Like because by 9 a.m. all of the other like day-to-day jobs are already taken.
Wait,
So
don't we like kind of currently do this where if you are on like a social welfare program, you can't actually get a job because if you get a job, you'll make too much money and but
yeah,
you don't have enough to get on your feet.
yeah. Like you can't have more than like $2,000 in savings ever in some cases for like disability. So you can't save. Like you can't do you are stuck.
I'm glad
It's
I'm
horrible.
glad the cycle is just repeating itself.
I know John Oliver did something about it recently. It was terrible. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
so
That woman who was sleeping in her car and then her car got yeah, that's what it was. She was like, I had to sleep in the car because I can't have $2,000 or whatever you said in my
yeah,
account.
yeah. Oh, it's wild. Um, Another option that's a little bit that a lot of people would do was a lodging house. You paid by the day, but it was gross. You would like share bath water with people, like it's not like the beds were clean and any of that. But if you didn't have the money, you didn't get a bed. So you would like you'd leave every morning, try to come back at night, but like if you didn't have the money, they wouldn't let you stay. And it also means like you had to carry everything that you owned, so people had like pockets full of like a couple things, but they weren't like um able to like leave their stuff anywhere. We're also in Whitechapel, London, which is like a just a terrifyingly poor part. A lot of people would immigrate to that part and start to try to like, uh, join society from there, and that was like made it really difficult. It was, the kind of thing where it's like 17 people living in a 10 by 10 room, like if you did own or were able to like rent like a house or a place to stay. A lot of alcoholism, lots of violence, lots of sex work, lots of anti-Semitism. So just like a really, really rough place to live, you can imagine.
Yeah, it just sounds
Um,
like literally Skid Row right now.
yeah. And yeah, yeah. Also, have you ever seen Sweeney Todd? I feel like that's the same time as well. It's like, it's just very gray. Everything's awful.
I only know
As
this
was
the
most of the
musical.
time. It is a
Oh,
musical.
yeah, well, I only know the song because it was in The Office.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
I like that. Anyway, everything's terrible. So let's talk about the crimes of Jack the Ripper. So people have been are murdered all the time. They were murdered all the time in this area. People are always murdered all the time. But there are the quote canonical five, who are the five women that they believe were the victims of Jack the Ripper. Donald Rumbelow, who wrote The Complete Jack the Ripper, thinks that there were four. I'll tell you about that later. So, like, we don't really know. There could be up to 11. There were like 11 of these like, style murders, like around this time. They were not all sex workers. You hear that over and over again. Some of them were, but they were not all that. Um, in this time, like being a poor woman and being a sex worker was kind of the same thing in like the record books, They would look at you the same way. It didn't really matter whether you did it or not. Um, they're also like so I'm going to tell you about the lives of the women and then the their where they were found and then a couple of suspects. But one I'm not really going to really talk about how they were killed, like how they were like maybe snuck up or maybe like in the middle of doing something. Because like in the Rumbelow book, his opinion is that for all of the murders, that they were in the middle of like having sex and the woman was leaned towards the wall with her skirts up. Like that's what how he thinks that they were killed. But then Haley Rubenhold, who wrote the book The Five, she makes a statement that I was like, whoa, this actually makes a lot of sense, is that maybe they were just sleeping when he attacked them.
Well, how did
Because
he kill them?
I'll tell you, he like
Okay.
mostly he would, for the most part slit their throat first. And it would be but no one really ever heard any like, scuffling or anything. So like they were 100% nights when these women were sleeping in doorways, when they were drunk sleeping in doorways, drunk sleeping in alleys. So it seems easier to slit the throat of a drunk person, you know, or of a like a drunk sleeping person.
It just seems weird that they like made up the whole dress flung. It's like
Well,
if
because no one knows.
yeah, because you can slit their throat any way you. It doesn't. It's a
Yeah,
weirdly specific way to slit someone's throat.
I know. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't mean I don't know. I've been reading books this week, so no one knows. But I mean, but the sleep thing kind of made a lot of sense because like not even asleep, like passed out,
Yeah.
in some cases. So there were inquests into all the murders to kind of figure out exactly what happened. Between 1888 and 1891, there were, like I said, 11 murders that could potentially be these, but these are the five that they think are most likely actual Jack the Ripper. If he was one person, I don't even know. We're not going to even get there.
Right.
So first, we have Mary Ann Nichols, aka Polly. So she went by Polly. She was born on August 26th, 1845. She went to school until she was 15. She was literate, which was a big deal. Like not everybody in this time was. Her parents were a laundress and a locksmith. They did not live in workhouses. They lived in like their own home, which was a big deal. But it was still like a very dirty and crowded like area that they lived in London, but her parents tried their best. Her mom died of tuberculosis because like everyone's half dead in these stories. But her dad kept the kids and didn't abandon them, which is like
Wow.
great. Like he tried. So like good for him. Um So her dad, stayed with the family, took care of the kids. Polly, when she was 18, got married to a man named William. And in the beginning, they were very happy. They were actually invited to live in a special new kind of apartment. So there was a man with the last name Peabody who came from America with this idea of making better housing for these like slum neighborhoods. And the idea was like, we will give like young families a room, like maybe a shared kitchen, maybe a shared like laundry area, but you could stay in these apartments for like reasonable prices, but you have to like abide by certain rules. So there's no drinking, there's no like violence, you have to have a job, like things like that. So his idea was like the incentive to stay here is to like live a better life. So families would be able to like move up from there. So it's a pretty good deal considering everything else is terrible. So her and William got this apartment and it worked for a while. But still, like in this time, there's no birth control. There's just everyone's just having babies all the time. And so Polly has her fifth baby. I mean, things are not like great. So while she's having her fifth baby, they hire a neighbor to come and help. And her husband ends up having an affair with that neighbor. Her name is Rosetta, and eventually William and Rosetta will get married and have more children, but they did have to leave the Peabody buildings because you weren't allowed to like live with your mistress. You get kicked out.
Pretty
So
strict, huh?
eventually they get kicked out. But Polly left her husband after he had this affair, and she had to go to a workhouse, where it's like the place where you really don't want to go to do like the hard labor, to prove that she was in like distress and to get a divorce. But it was like almost impossible to get divorced. And she couldn't just get a divorce. Like she couldn't just, he would be like, I didn't do anything wrong, like whatever. So she just lived apart from him, but she was able to get like a little bit of a settlement from him. So he paid her 5 shillings a week for a while to like help her. But basically, him and Rosetta took the kids and she was just like on the streets by herself. And so she was also started to drink a lot during this time. And like these a lot most of these women are going to be like very severe alcoholics. So she's drinking
Yeah,
all the
why wouldn't
time
you? Your life sucks. You got like 17 kids. You're homeless. You're breaking rocks for a living. Like, why wouldn't
for
you
real.
drink? What are you gonna do?
No, uh, like it'd be like everything's fine. No, things are not fine. So even though Polly was not fully divorced, there is no way for a woman to make enough money doing women things like sewing and whatever to take care of herself. So she needed to have a man to like live with so they could like try to get it together. So she was ended up seeing a man, and because she moved in with someone else, her husband was able to go to the court and stop giving her 5 shillings a week. So now she was like had even less money. She would be in and out of workhouses. She would sleep in Trafalgar Square. In April 1888, she got a job as a servant through a work program. Which was a pretty good job. She lived in a nice house, but they were very, very religious and they didn't drink. And they probably made her do things like read the Bible to like atone for her sins. Like it wasn't great.
They
It
make
was,
her stop drinking. I mean, I could do that if I was drinking.
oh yeah, they made her stop drinking. So she was fired for 3 months, probably for drinking.
Got it.
Yeah. It didn't last long, unfortunately. She's in and out of lodging houses, like paying, her pennies to get a bed. Finally, it's 11 p.m. on August 30th, 1888, and she's drunk. She's trying to get a bed in her usual lodging house, and the witnesses say that she said a couple things. She said, "I've had my lodging money 3 times today, and I've spent it," which you can imagine that in a drunk voice. And I've spent it. All I had my money and I spent it. So, you know what I mean.
She sounds fun.
And then she said to someone, so DOS money is like your money for your bed, DOSS. I don't know, I've never heard that before, but that's what that is. She says, I'll soon get my DOS money. See what a jolly bonnet I've got now. So I think, jolly bonnet, that she was going to pawn her hat. Some people have said that meant that she was going to go and, do some sex work because she looked great. I don't think she looked great, but you know what I mean.
She
She was
doesn't look
best.
great for like what you had on the streets there.
Yeah. So So whatever she said something. She was definitely drinking, definitely spending all of her money on booze that night, as she did most nights. A lot of the people in these stories would pawn things for like a day. So you like pawn your boots for a couple pence and then you get them back. If you don't get them back within a certain amount of time, then they can sell them or whatever. So like a lot of stuff is pawned. So she probably went to go pawn her thing. And I mean, also then like it's 11 o'clock at night. It is dark as shit. There is, I think I've mentioned it before, and I have it here. This book, The Invention of Murder. I've like tried to slog through it a couple times, but it has a t bunch of stories in it by Judith Flanders, and it starts with the story of, a servant going out, and then while she's gone, the family she's working for is murdered. But like they talk about how you get lost in your own neighborhood when it's that dark. You know,
Yeah, I'm sure.
like it's just you walk out the door and you might as well be in like a black hole. So it's dark, and she's walking around, at 3:40 a.m., a man named Charles Allen Cross finds Polly's body laying on a sidewalk. Her body's on the sidewalk, and her left hand was reaching out, touching a gate, so she's a little bit like spread out. Her throat had been cut, her vagina had been stabbed, her stomach was opened with huge cuts across her abdomen, and they found out that when they found her, her face was still warm, but her hands were cold. So she would have died immediately from having her throat slit, but it would have taken at least 5 minutes to do the rummaging around in her belly, but nothing was missing. Um,
What do you mean
William,
nothing was? He was literally rummaging in her belly.
but he didn't like take any organs or anything.
Oh,
Because some of them, they think that he took like a kidney. I don't even know if I wrote that down. I think he took like a kidney from another one. And I also think he mailed a kidney to the police at one point and was like, "Oh, this is a lady's kidney." So he like was taunting the police a little bit. I don't think I'm gonna get to that because there's so
okay.
much. But no, but it just he's kind of like rummaged in her insides. It's gross.
The way you replied to me was like almost like a yeah. Of course, he was rummaging in her organs. Like it's like a
He's Jack the
legitimate
Ripper.
question. Okay,
He's not like
fine,
patting her on the head and kissing her on the cheek and being
fine,
like,
fine.
right. Um, so William, her first husband, and her friend Ellen identified her body. William hadn't seen her in 3 years. Both William and her friend Ellen testified that Polly did not do sex work. So like they were like that. She was an alcoholic and not well, but she was not. They testified that she's not a prostitute. So she died a few days after her birthday on August 31st, 1888. She was 43 when she died. Our next victim is Annie Chapman Smith, or Annie Smith Chapman. She was born on September 24th, 1840. She was the daughter of a soldier. She went to school. They had a military school, so she went to school, and things were going pretty well. And then scarlet fever came through their like barracks or wherever they were living, and four of her siblings out of six died in 2 weeks of scarlet fever. So just like so fast, her family was like destroyed. Her father died by suicide by slitting his own throat because he was so upset. Um, Her mother ended up renting out rooms in her home, and one of the people she rented to was a man named John Chapman, and John and Annie got married. There's a wedding picture of them, where they are dressed very nicely, and he's like leaning against a cabinet, and they like paid a good amount of money for it, as well as when they would have children later, they would take pictures of the children. Which is like in a time where you didn't really do this yet, which I think totally makes sense for someone who lost so many siblings so young.
Yeah,
You'd yearn for a photo of someone, you
yeah,
know?
of course.
So she did that. But she was also definitely like a very severe alcoholic for a very long time and also during her pregnancies. Her children were either they died early or they were like obviously disabled. And now we'd say it was fetal alcohol syndrome, but they didn't like know that then. But that was happening and she could not stop. John got a good job as a driver out in the country, but she had to leave because she was making a scene every night. Like he kept the children and kept his job, and she had to leave and she went into the city. He gave her a little bit of money each week, but like never really saw her again. He did die a few years later of cirrhosis of the liver, so like he wasn't innocent in the drinking, most likely.
What are these people drinking?
It's such a good question. I think like rum and like weird British moonshine.
It can't be like good rum. It's got to have like
Oh no.
horrible stuff in there.
There's beer. It's definitely not good. Yeah. Um, and she would walk 25 miles from the center of London to where John was to say goodbye to him when he passed away. Um, she lived in those common law situations, like I was saying, like you couldn't really be by yourself if you're a woman. You need to have a man to like take care of you in some way for like a protection and for like getting they could get better jobs. So she had a couple of those common law situations that you would maybe take someone's last name, but like not officially. That was really common where you like didn't really get married, but you would take their last name for a certain amount of time, which seems nice because less paperwork.
Right.
No shit. She was also not a sex worker. She sewed and crocheted and would sell the things that she was making. She also, but when she's in 1888, she's very sick. She also has tuberculosis. So, I mean, imagine everyone's coughing also. Up blood
Yeah, it seems like a
constantly.
horrible time to be alive.
Horrible. So on September 7th, 1888, she went to her usual lodging house but didn't have any money. She asked them to hold the bed for her and she went looking for money to borrow from a friend. So she ended up being found sort of in between two houses in a yard. It was a place that was known as like a safe place to sleep. The yard was not locked. It was like a little bit covered and she probably wandered in there to go to sleep. Um, at 5:15 a.m., someone said that they heard a woman say, like, yell no, but she was already dead by then because they found her body at 6 a.m. and she'd been dead for at least 2 hours. Her throat was cut so badly that like her head was like nearly cut off. There were no signs of a struggle. She had been totally disemboweled. A section of her stomach was on her left shoulder, and another section of her skin, plus her small intestines, were on her right shoulder.
I'm
And just
trying to
like
envision that.
just like gobs of like innards on top of you.
Ugh.
And then this is where some of her organs may have been missing. And they, it's either, I mean, this is like a big, no one knows anything. I mean, either he took them, or whoever killed her took them, or they took them in the hospital when they were doing the autopsy, which totally makes sense because they would like do that all the time. Like take bodies to like study them, you know?
I guess.
Like that's what they used, remember they used to like grave rob to be able to see bodies?
Yeah, I guess I'm
Not like
picturing
yesterday.
somebody like looking at the body in the moment and realizing that it's missing organs versus we sent the body off somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know until you send the body off somewhere. But it's like they could have gotten lost in transit,
They're not gonna like just hack it up right there in the
technically.
middle of the alley.
Yeah, I mean, it was already pretty hacked up. Um, Annie's, her brother was, last name Smith, was also an alcoholic, just like, several members of their family. After he identified his sister's body, he got sober and he moved to Texas. So if your last name is Smith and you live in Texas, you could be related to Annie Chapman.
There's probably only one of you.
Um, she died on September 8th, 1888. She was 47. So all these women are like
That's
in
gotta
their
be
40s.
old as shit for like that
Rough.
age or
Yeah.
that time.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, our next
God,
victim is Elizabeth Stride. Elizabeth was born November 27th, 1843 in Sweden. So she grew up on a farm in Sweden. She was basically primed to be a servant. So she moved from her farm to the city to be a servant, and she ended up getting pregnant. And so someone got her pregnant. We don't know if it was like mutual or if it was like an assault or like a power thing, like who knows. He got her pregnant and he gave her syphilis. Cool.
as you do.
Uh-huh. And at 7 months, she had a stillborn baby. But her reputation then was tarnished because you can't get pregnant without being married, obviously, in this time. So she moved to London to kind of start over again. She learned English. By the end, they said that you couldn't even tell if she was Swedish. She spoke English just, as well as they did. She married an older man and they ran some coffee houses. And it was like kind of a good business. There were some coffee houses in town where you could like, I don't know, just like a cafe. You'd go and sit for a little bit and read and then like not drink booze, just drink coffee. And it started to be kind of fashionable. So they did that for a little bit, but then that failed and she ended up kind of out on her own. She ended up going on, um, like living in the streets and becoming kind of a grifter. She would kind of make up these lies to get sympathy, to get people to give her money. So there was a thing called the Princess Alice disaster, which was a boat that sank, and she said that she was on it and lost her children and husband, just to get more money from people. She was back and forth between like different men, getting money from them. At one point, like a more well-to-do woman saw her and thought she was her sister, and she just said, "Yep, that's me," and she started spending time with her and taking her money. So like she just was kind of doing whatever it takes to survive. Um, as she was getting older, so she was getting into her 40s, she ended up having seizures from the syphilis. It just like gets worse and worse. And um, on September 29th, 1888, some people saw her talking to some different men, but who knows if those witness statements are true? You know?
Who knows if any of it is true? It's so
I
long
know.
ago. There's no records. Nobody cares about these people. Like, there's no law. Like, there's no nothing. Like,
Yeah, I feel like I mean, all his witness statements are like, yeah, I saw her walking down the street, I knew her, but it's like 1 in the morning. Like, you're drunk too, dude. You know?
yeah.
Like, how am I believing what you said? So her body was found at 1 a.m. and her throat had been slit, but that is it. So Elizabeth Stride died on the 30th of September, 1888. She was 44. Elizabeth is the one that Donald Rumblow thinks was a domestic situation and not Jack the Ripper. Um, because this is the first of two that he kills on the same night, which is called the double event, which was possible because remember when Ted Bundy killed those two women at that lake on
Yeah.
the same day? So like
Well, no, it wasn't a lake. It was the
it was
wasn't the
like,
sorority house?
mm, yes, he killed several people at sorority or yes, on the same day. But he went to a lake and he got one woman to help him with his car, took her away, murdered her, came back and found another woman and murdered her before they even knew the first woman was missing.
Yeah, so it's not even any aberrant behavior. Like, it's just there wasn't any history of serial killers. So like to them, they're like, this possibly can't be the same guy because this guy doesn't do it this way.
Well, they thought that it was,
Oh,
but
they
the
did.
author of
Okay,
it said that it thinks that it wasn't, so who knows?
got it.
But anyway, the same day, so the same day, September 30th, they also found Catherine Eddowes. Um, she calls herself Kate. Kate was born on April 14th, 1842. She lived with a pretty normal family. She went to school as well. And her parents passed away in the same year, so she went to live with relatives in and like work for them, but they kicked her out. So she was probably like stealing or doing something that like they didn't like and they kicked her out. She married an Irish man named Thomas Conway. They had a baby and they would do things. He was a peddler and like a seller. So they'd go around, they'd go from like town to town and she would write limericks and songs for people and they would like give people little poems, write poetry. They never got married, but they cohabitated. And one of the towns they went to was Locksley, like in Robin Hood.
That's fun.
Yeah, nothing. Um, she also had a tattoo of his initials, which was like really wild. 'Cause like ladies didn't have tattoos. Um, Eventually, both her and her husband were drinking in excess, and her husband got violent, and she took her children to the workhouse, which is like not anything that you would want to do, but something that like you would have to do if you were in like a really dangerous situation. Her sister would help her sometimes. Eventually, her children grow up, and she's estranged from her daughter because she keeps like stealing money from her daughter as well to keep drinking. So Kate is known in the neighborhood. Um, she eventually meets a man named John Kelly. He didn't abuse her, but they're both drinking a lot, and they were in and out of different houses. She was arrested for being drunk and disorderly a lot, which is like terrible, but also you got to sleep inside, you know?
Yeah, that's all you have to do.
Yeah. So she in September 1888, Kate and John went to Kent, the area of England, to pick hops, which was like a thing you could do seasonally, and you would like make a good amount of money. So they did that. When they got back to London, they were trying to find a room where they could both be in together because you could rent a bed for two people, but they didn't have enough money, so he ended up pawning his boots and like finding a bed for himself, and she was on the streets. So it's Saturday, September 29th, 1888, and at 8:30 p.m., she was drunk and passed out on the street. She was arrested because she was passed out on the street, and at 1 a.m., they let her go. They said that she was sober enough to get out, and they let her go. So she got out of the police station at 1 a.m. They found her body at 1:44. So in those 44 minutes, he found her and killed her. I wrote she had also been disemboweled in all caps by accident, so it just jumps out at me. Um, but her face was cut up, her intestines were put on her shoulder again. Her and the next one, there's on their Wikipedia pages, there's some really gruesome pictures of their bodies.
Yikes.
Um, it is very bad. Um, she is the one where, oh, she's the one where, okay, so this is like a weird theory. There was like a part, do you remember this? There was like a part of her apron with poop on it found in an alley.
No.
So like they knew it was part of her apron because it was like pulled off. But like the theory is like people would just go to the bathroom in alleys, right? And they would like rip off bits of their clothes to clean themselves. So that's not like it's gross, but it's not like abnormal, you know?
You know what's funny, Taylor, is when you said that her and her husband would go hop picking, I just
Hmm.
pictured like this cute couple and they would go like cherry picking when it's cherry season. And I
I
was like,
know.
oh no, this is like shit covered hell in London in the 1840s, and that's probably not
That
what
was definitely
happened.
the best time of their life though, when they were hot picking, because it was like finally
It's
a
just
little
not like a
nice.
cute romantic date. It's like
No, they slept in a
misery.
barn. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's just
but at least
misery.
it had a roof. You know what I mean? So this little piece of apron is found in an alley like nearby, and they know that it's hers because like the pattern matches all the things. And then above it, on the wall, is graffiti that says, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing," which doesn't make any sense. It's like a weird double negative, but this is like a weird thing. So
Did
they
Cat
say,
Buchanan write it?
for real. So they say that it's graffiti. So in my head, I imagine it really big written on the wall, right? But it's not. The letters are 3/4 of an inch high, so it's very small. And I learned in the After Dark podcast that everybody always had chalk with them because you would like maybe like need to write a note on the street or like tally up something at a restaurant or like whatever. So chalk was not something that was weird. So it was written in chalk in these short letters. And then the police officer who found it erased it right away because he was afraid of like violence if people were blaming Jewish people for the Jack Ripper murders or whatever. So it was erased. So we don't even know if it was really there. We don't know what it looked like. We don't know what it said. So like it's people take that and run with it and say Jack the Ripper must have been Jewish, but like it could have been totally unrelated, you know?
Also, wasn't like just anti-Semitism just generally rampant
Yeah.
in the
Like at
world?
first I thought that it was like most things I read like make it sound like it's part of it, but I feel like it's not part of it at all, you know?
Right.
Um when she died, um so Kate Eddowes died on the 30th of September, 1888. She was 46. When she passed away, 500 people came to her funeral. She had a glass hearse, take her through town because people like genuinely cared for her and were afraid. You know, you're looking at her pictures.
This is what? Like it looks like a grizzly just
Yeah.
went to town.
And that's why I think a lot of other podcasts are like, we're not going to talk about the gruesome part. And like, I want to mention it because it's so interesting, but like, what was he doing? Why was he doing that? Why is he rummaging under there? And also in the middle of this, he does send a kidney to the police, and there's always like a couple letters. Some of them are like potential hoaxes, some of them aren't. Like he's kind of toying with the police. Maybe it's just like very. It's all stuff that we'll never figure out.
So crazy.
So our last victim, um, is. Hey, what is our last name? I think I lost it. Our last victim, is Mary Jane Kelly. There it is, Mary Jane Kelly. Her past is a little bit more murky. She kind of like made up her past, so she didn't tell anyone the truth, most likely. She said she was born around 1863. That makes her a lot younger than the other victims. She said she was from Ireland or Wales. She said that she had children, that her husband died, but excuse me, there's no paper trail for any of that, so they don't know what happened. Um, she was absolutely a sex worker. So this is the one where like that was her job. She worked in a high class brothel in another part of London where it would be like you would have like a fancy dinner and go to a show and then go home with someone. So you could like pretend that it was a little more up and up than a thing.
How does Wikipedia have these pictures up? Like,
Yes, I feel like they shouldn't.
I almost feel like they shouldn't do this.
I
This is like
totally agree. And it didn't come up until Kate's and I was like, oh my God. And then like the Mary Jane Kellys are really bad. They're wild. Let me tell you a little bit about her first. Um, So She was a high-class sex worker. She was sex trafficked to Paris by her like madam, and she managed to escape, but she had to work in like a worse neighborhood after that. So she was working on the East End, and in Whitechapel, and she was seeing a man named John Barnett. So Mary Jane and John shared a room, and I'm pretty sure that I've been there because I'm pretty sure I went on a Jack the Ripper tour when I was in London in grad school, and that we like walked past Mary Kelly's house. So it was like a 10 by 10 room on the first floor of a building with a door like heading into an alley that she shared with John. They at 13 Miller's Court. Um, they had a little bit of a tumultuous relationship. They would fight. At one point, they were fighting and someone threw something and it broke the window next to the door. So you could move the curtain, put your hand through the window, and open the door from the outside. So, like, the room didn't lock, basically.
Okay.
So on November 9th, she's out late with her friends. John came by and he left. A friend named George and one named Mary visited. Mary left at 1 a.m. and she came back at 3. The lights were off, so she thought that Mary was asleep. George said that he saw her with someone, and she said he can come back later. They think that that could be Jack the Ripper, but no one really. But it's who knows, and who knows what the fuck George's deal is, you know? Um, but at 11 a.m., someone came to collect their rent, and he opened the door by putting his hand through the broken window and opening it, and he found her body. And you can see it online. It is awful,
Like, what is that? Like, did he saw her in half?
sort of. So he took the flesh out of her thighs, so her legs are really far apart. He took everything out of her stomach. Um, her legs were cut open, her abdomen was removed, her uterus, kidney, and one breast were under the bed. Her liver was between her feet, her intestines were to her right, the other breast was by her right foot, her skin removed from her thighs and stomach was on the table next to her. So she is mutilated.
Yeah, just it looks like an animal just got to her.
Yeah. So that was November 9th, 1888, and Mary Jane Kelly was only 25. So she's the youngest of all of our victims. So those are the main ones. As I said, there might be others. What are your thoughts right now? I'm going to tell you a couple suspects after this.
Uh, yeah, I'm just shocked that Wikipedia puts the pictures up.
I know.
Like, like, like,
Like they should be blurred, and you have to choose to click on them at the
yeah.
very
Well,
least.
so there was one when it was the face looked like it was like,
Like a baseball mitt.
yeah, and I was just like,
Hmm.
I really probably, I probably still would have clicked show me the picture, but like, man, I
Yeah,
would
but
have
you would
thought
have
about it.
it would have consented to it.
Yeah, it wouldn't just
Exactly.
like popped out at me the way that one. That one was like even grosser almost than the Mary Kelly one.
Yeah. Yeah. They're really bad. So like you were saying before, like could it be a doctor? Like the assumption that it had to be a doctor. Who knows? Like it wasn't like as surgical as I thought it was, you know? Like definitely someone like escalating from the first one where he just like stabbed her belly, but like moving the intestines to like the shoulders and moving them around and stuff. It's really like it feels exploratory and weird.
Yeah,
Taylor, Jack the Ripper is weird. You heard it
yeah.
here first. Um,
Breaking news.
some yeah, some people think that so some of the people that they think it could be, there's a man named Montague John Druitt. He was a lawyer and a teacher. He died by suicide after the last murder, so things stopped after that. So that's like convenient that it could be him. I don't know. None of these guys, I don't have like a favorite. There was a guy named Aaron Kosminski. He was a Polish Jewish barber, and he was later committed to an asylum. And he's the one where like the DNA evidence says it could be him, but like that DNA evidence is crap. And he was also like very disturbed. Like his family was like, yeah, he should probably be in an institution, you know? But he is brought up because he's Jewish and because of the graffiti about Jews not being blamed for nothing, which I don't even think I don't believe that that's 100% related, you know?
Why would you do that yourself if you're Jewish?
I know. That doesn't make any sense. Um, there is someone who named George Chapman who was a Polish immigrant and another barber, which I guess probably is the reason that the guy's a barber in Sweeney Todd. But he poisoned his victims and he was in prison in the US um, during most of the things. Like, probably wasn't him. There is, oh no, no, I'm sorry. George Chapman, he was executed in 1903 for killing his wife. So he's definitely like not great. It was Dr. Thomas Neal Cream who was in the United States, but he was a serial killer who poisoned his victims, but also the MO doesn't match. Um, there's the artist Walter Sickert, who is a British painter, and he sort of made himself a suspect because he painted things like a painting called the Jack the Ripper's bedroom, where it's like he painted his own bedroom and there's like a weird figure in it, and he painted like a man next to dead bodies, like looking upset about it. So you're like, well, stop painting yourself doing these murders,
Yeah, that's weird
you nerd.
interpretive art.
So, um, people think that it could have been him, but I don't know. And then the other fun suspect is Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence, who is the grandson of Queen Victoria. So they said that he did it to kind of like cosplay as a poor person, slum it down in Whitechapel, potentially because he was gay and like hated women, like a bunch of weird things. But he probably didn't do it either. Like he was kind of a weird guy. He wasn't very smart, probably because of like royal family inbreeding, etc. But I don't think he did it. I don't know who did it. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's all one person even, there's nothing like they think they call him like Gentleman Jack and they think that potentially he was like a higher upper class person because of like the witness statements who may have saw someone who looked like that. But I'm like, again, like I don't think any of these witnesses are credible.
No, I think it has to be someone who is like rich or royalty or of status because if you're a normal run-of-the-mill sociopath, then why not make it so that your true identity is discovered after your death? Unless you have like a
Hmm.
family that you need to preserve their credibility for.
Like, do you think the Zodiac might be alive and have like a letter after he dies that finally lets us know who he was?
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Wasn't did I live across from the Zodiac guy? Remember the Jaws house across from my
No,
place off Western?
I don't remember.
The house looked like a shark.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that was a Black Dahlia thing.
That yeah, yep, sorry.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep, of course.
Um, yeah. But they also think that could have been a doctor. But I mean, anyone can get a knife, Like I don't know, I feel like that doesn't prove anything to me either. And also, I like the leather apron idea because like you said, like, yeah, I'm covered in blood. I'm a butcher. Leave me alone.
Yeah, but are you butchering at like 1 o'clock in the morning? I guess you could be.
Probably. I feel like yes. I feel like that's a very good alibi, you know? I feel like
I
that's
mean,
the time.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's again like with stuff like this, like it's so hard for me to wrap my head around it because like understanding the time in which this story occurred is like so hard to actually really internalize. Like the
Hmm.
police don't give a shit, everybody smells like
Hmm.
shit, everybody's
Hmm.
homeless, they're half drunk. It's like nothing makes sense. So why not just throw this in the mix? Sure, just start gutting people. Who cares? Like
For real.
we're sleeping in an alleyway covered in rats. Like
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I didn't think of that. You're covered in vermin, I'm sure. Like all sorts of like bed
wouldn't it
bugs
be
and
better to just killed? Like
I mean, it's definitely a it's a rough life, It's very, very sad that
this
you would
one
even
died of
like get to this
tuberculosis. That
point.
one died of scarlet fever. This one's gonna die of
Hmm.
starvation and cirrhosis of the liver. Like it's like just
Hmm.
end it.
I know. It's pretty, pretty fucking terrible. Yeah. I hope that God, it makes a lot of sense to me that they would have been asleep.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the most logical thing.
Yeah. Like I didn't think about that, but when like I read that in the intro to the Five book, I was like, oh. Well, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, because they're going to be passed out on the street, whether they're like, and like, most of them were drinking, so they're not going to hear you coming up behind them with their little clickety-clack shoes on the cobblestones. So you can just kill them.
Hold on.
Are you looking at dead bodies?
No. Um.
Okay.
Anyways. No, I'm just like reading some random stuff. Um. Anyways, no, it's a fun story. It's fun. I don't know. It's too far in the past for me to really give a shit, but I mean,
I
like,
think
I
it's
don't.
fun because
It's
people
not
still talk
sad
about it,
anymore.
though.
It's sorry. I don't mean like don't give a shit. I mean, like, in the sense like Usually it's like, oh, it's a sad story, but it's like, who cares? People all would have been dead, like, 3 years after this happened, anyways.
Yeah, but I care about it. I think I think it's so hard. It's so hard to be a woman now. Even things like getting your period in this place. Like it just must have been so hard. And having babies in like a gross workhouse situation and things like that. Just like you really didn't have a chance.
Okay,
There's nothing
looking
you
at
could
it
do.
170 years after the fact, was it not worth it for them to lose their lives so that media could have so much fun content to go off of?
I know, and that's on us. That's an indictment of the all of us,
We're the true
of
killers.
the virologists. Yep. Who are we?
I mean, look at you. You're generating content.
I know, that's what I'm saying. You're not wrong.
But I'm glad you're generating the content because I think it's a really interesting thing. Also, it really adds to the mystique of like old timey London, where it's like you can just like kind of close your eyes and like imagine like just like
Hmm.
someone secretly like walking through like the cobblestone alleys with
Oh
like
yeah,
a
it's
trench coat on. Like
foggy.
it's foggy and like a
Yeah.
little rat scurries out on the side. Like it,
I mean,
it
ex 1,000%.
it's a
Yeah.
whole vibe. Like it is literally
Yeah.
like when you asked about Halloween Horror Night, like
Hmm.
all they're really trying to ultimately create is that moody of an atmosphere.
Hmm. Hmm. If you weren't inside when the sun went down, like, good luck, you know?
Again, something you would say about modern day Skid Row.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Um, yeah, pretty terrible. Also, there's like the yeah, the oh my God. I'm just looking at his pictures again. Yeah, it's just hard. It reminded me a little bit of like, so the other day I was at in a parking lot, whatever, and I got in the car and immediately I locked my doors. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I have to remember to teach Florence that, because like that's like you have to do that immediately. And then like, they talk about this all the time, like all the times I would walk home with my keys in my hand just in case, like in New York, in Queens, like in like places that like are 1,000 times more safe than Whitechapel in 1888, but still never 100% safe, you know?
Taylor, I got home yesterday. Luna was still at the border. And like, you've seen my house, but you've never been here when it's like night. And like, when it's night and you're alone in the house and like everything is a window around
I
you.
know, I was gonna say, I feel like you have not put curtains up, have you?
No, I have not. It is a
No.
little bit like, okay, somebody could just like walk straight into my yard and just be
Hmm.
staring at me in bed. And
Hmm.
usually I don't even think about it because it's like Luna's here and like she's so horrible, but she's just a mean dog and like and I feel it makes me comfortable that she's so mean. But
Yeah.
like I mean I get that feeling too of like the vulnerability of like somebody could be out there, somebody could be trying to get in. Like
Hmm.
it's freaky.
And I think we don't think about how dangerous it is to be, an unhoused person on the street, you know? Someone could stab you, like you said, because you're vulnerable because you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Like you said in your sleep one, like at some point your body has to shut down. So whether you find like a little dark corner to sleep in or like, a tent in Skid Row or something, like it's not safe. You should also get curtains. It's weird.
Um Lost Angels, watch that. That is a documentary from 2010 filmed on Skid Row interviewing 8 individuals who ended up there, and it is
Ugh.
the stuff you hear that those people experience like crazy.
Yeah,
Like you wouldn't wish that on anybody.
I know. It's really sad.
Anyways, Taylor, thanks for sharing. We'll leave it on a upbeat note.
Woohoo. Yeah, read any of the 1,000 books in Jack the Ripper. They're all fun. It's fun to be like, I think it's this guy. I think it's this guy. To be like, wait a minute, there's this. Oh, that's fun.
Do you have
Whoa.
anything to sign us off with?
I do not, but happy Halloween, everyone. I hope you had a nice October. And thank you for listening. Find us on all socials at Doomed to Fail Pod. Email us, doomedtofailpod@gmail.com.
Sweet.
Who
Thanks,
do you
Taylor.
think Jack the Ripper is? Tell me.
Oh
Let me
yeah,
know.
that'll be a great thing to write in about. Or
You're like, Taylor, you're
Zodiac.
stupid. It was obvious. Oh my God, if you are the Zodiac, please call us. Or if you like
We
found a letter in your grandpa's house that like confirmed that he was Zodiac, you're not sure where to go with that information, we'll take it.
we get press immunity
Hmm.
because we're press.
Hmm. Yep.
Um,
We can scoop that and it'll be awesome.
Sweet. We'll go ahead and cut things off.
Thank you.